All right, guys, welcome back to the Raised Hunting Podcast. I'm David Holder, and we're joined today by some special guests. Not the special guests that I usually have to apologize for all the time. One of them is here, which is Easton. But because we have some other special guests, I'm not going to apologize today like I normally do, because I think usually he reins it in a little bit when that is the case.
Everybody's going to be upset considering the past 2 podcast episodes have been just me and Warren, and they've been very loved.
Whatever.
They've been some of our top views, haven't they, Nick? Common occurrence there.
That's because Warren put money behind them to see if he could get them out there so they would blow up. But anyhow. All right, guys. Well, let me do a little housekeeping before we get rolling, and I'll introduce our guests. The first thing that I want to make sure that I tell you guys is, yes, the scents are in. Matter of fact, I can't tell you how many of you guys have been purchasing scents, but just make sure that you get them before they run out. That's all I will say on that. Canine stuff. Lots of guys asking questions about our canine line of products, and we got plenty of that stuff in as well. Take a look at the website. If you got questions, shoot them to us. Knocks are in. We have sold out of one color that I know of, the green 204s. Yeah. So the green 204 is out, and we aren't going to have any more this summer. So get them. We apologize. You guys are showing way too much love is the only reason that we're selling out of this stuff as quickly as we are. So we appreciate that. So for all the other podcast listeners, make sure that you guys go and dislike the last 2 podcasts, because I don't like hearing that these guys are paying to make you guys look like that you like them.
We don't have to pay at all. They just like us more.
Whatever. All right. So with that, you're not going to have a story this morning, are you? But we do have wacky facts. I even made sure that I went. So I'm taking over Warren's role today when we get done. I'm pretty excited.
That's what the buttons are for.
Oh, okay.
I normally give them a green or an X.
Yeah, so he won't do that to your comments, So
unless I have to.
So today we are visited, or we have 2 guests in the house. Andy has come. This is second or third time? Second time, isn't it?
We'll go with second, yeah.
Second time. And then Catherine is here. Both of them are from the DNR. I'll let them kind of introduce their roles. But we're basically talking about deer management and how people can help themselves. So hopefully this is not just going to help people that are in Iowa. It's going to help people that are listening wherever, because you can typically apply. You might have to adjust it a little bit depending on where you live. But other than that, I'm excited because I got lots of questions for you guys. And a lot of our questions come from our viewers that they, sent them to us. I didn't write them all down, but I think we got a whole bunch. So, Catherine, why don't you go first, if you don't mind, and introduce yourself, and so we'll go from there.
Sure. I'm Catherine Cummings. I'm the Western Iowa Depredation Biologist. Essentially, I help cover west of 35, but I cover 20 counties, pretty much 30 to 35 as the 2 kind of key areas. And then there's 9 of us on the depredation staff.
That's your division, is west of 35?
Yeah, west of 35, and then I have a staff member in Northwest Iowa that I help oversee, and then a staff member in the Les Hills area, Missouri River unit that I help oversee, and then North Central too.
So pretty much half the state, if anybody doesn't know Iowa. I-35 literally goes through the center of the state, north and south, so yeah, half the state.
Yeah, and then I help cover 20 counties individually, taking deer depredation calls and other wildlife depredation calls.
No, I'll let him introduce, but don't let me I'm going to ask
too.
now. Yeah, my very first question is, you're not just deer though, right? You're all wildlife.
All wildlife.
Okay.
Yep. Any call from a squirrel in your backyard to deer eating your crops to mangy fox and everything in between.
Call about that? Like, hey, I don't like this.
We'll get into all that, I
think. You never know when that phone rings what you're going to get. That's why as soon as you said something about wacky facts, I'm like, oh, geez, like we just don't know what's coming at you. And so when a biologist gets that blank look on their face, they're like, is this something I should have known? Or like, is this a Google question? Or what's going on here? But yeah, so Catherine covers the area I used to cover for depredation. So I was working same sort of job, covering Western Iowa there. I've now transitioned into a position that's more of a statewide like coordinator for wildlife conflict, but then also really working with urban wildlife issues that come up and trying to really zoom in on those urban areas. So getting a lot more of the goose calls, the urban coyote calls, that sort of stuff, but still tied in with the depredation team, especially during the legislative session when things are coming in from the State House.
Gotcha. Well, very cool. Well, I just want to thank you guys again for being here. And like I said, I think we're going to answer a bunch of questions. We're probably going to create as many as we answer. You know, it seems like when people talk about something like this, then that's what happens. So, like I said, we did not come with an agenda. So I don't know if you guys got a specific place you want to start, or Easton, if you got I know I have a handful of questions. I don't mind starting either. So.
Go ahead.
All right. So
I have one main one, and I'm just going to wait for the right punchline. So,
so I'm going to clarify because I know what he's already talking about. The whole spike comment that he made before we turned the cameras on is because I was notorious for a while.
Still is.
No, I've been corrected. I think Andy even might have been one that
he was the one to roast you for me, and he didn't. I set him up. He didn't know.
Killing spikes. Hey. I believed that spikes were never going to accomplish. They're never going to get to be anything, and so I was like, okay, I'm going to shoot spikes, and so I did for a while. Now, don't get me wrong. The first couple spikes I killed was when I was a kid, and I killed a deer, and I was super pumped that I had killed a buck.
And that is understandable.
Right.
That is not what we're referring to here.
But I seem to, at times, have multiple spikes at my place. I don't understand what's going on. When 6 or 7 of them show up one morning, I'm like, okay, it's time to thin some spikes. And these guys are like, that could have been the next booner. And I'm like, I don't know. I don't know whether it's not going to be now, so it doesn't matter.
It never is going to be. That drives us nuts. Because he also has this weird thing for eye guards. If they don't have anything for eye guards, or like maybe a couple inches, shoot them. Like, not worth it. Don't give them a chance. Like, they could be 2 years old and they're just barely starting. Not worth anything. Shoot it. No opportunity whatsoever. But I think we're going to break into some of those myths that might be getting thrown around.
All right.
Well, and what's nice is we're talking about a public resource, right? Everybody's envisioning what their trophy is, what their hunt is, what they want. It's kind of personal at that level, and that deer is having that connection with that person. They harvest it. It might be something that the next guy might pass up. You don't know. Mm-hmm. So
now I will say, a few years ago, I had a doe that had horns. And the only reason I knew this is because she had a fawn with her. I mean, there was a group of does, and I kept seeing her. But she had antlers that were probably 3-4 inches tall, but stayed in velvet. Yep. And then it was kind of mushroomed at the top. And so I wanted to shoot her, but I didn't want to put a buck tag on the doe. You know, I was like, I know this is a doe, but I have no way that I could tell you guys. I knew what I was shooting when I shot it. You know, it would go down as a buck. So I tried to get my wife to shoot it because she was like, I was like, okay, if that deer comes in and you could get because she wasn't going to get to hunt anymore is my kind of what was going on. And it comes in, and so she's like, oh, okay. So she comes to full draw. There's 4 of them standing there, and she shoots the wrong one. So she kills the doe, but not the. I was like, why didn't you shoot the one with the horns? And she's like, I thought you were talking about that one. So she was around for probably 2-3 years, something like that we knew of for sure. Now we have another doe that we do think now that she's passed, and this deer I think was 8 or 9, and we called her floppy tongue. And this is going to be a question that I have. This was one of my questions because I've got another one now, but we called her floppy tongue because her tongue hung out all the time. We thought she got shot or something, but now I'm seeing a few other deer that look the same. Is there something out there that causes this?
I feel like we both looked at each other.
That one I think was it looked like it was damaged by something.
Right.
I mean, it did not look like it.
But I got another one now that looks the same.
Mm-hmm.
And so that you would think that'd be odd to have 2 of them shot
on
the same way.
property.
Yeah. Well, not even on the same property.
They're way
Okay,
away.
different properties.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep, totally different place.
yeah, that's really interesting. My brain would have gone to some sort of injury.
Yep.
Whether it was a light vehicle strike or a shot in the miss or something. That's where my head would go to. But never say never. That's what I've learned with genetics and wild animals. You don't know what could come up, I guess.
Gotcha.
So I have 2 main ones here. One is big picture, and everybody talks about it, and there may not be a proper answer or not. And then the second one is a little more narrowed down. But number one is when you are trying to manage a farm, say, I mean, I don't even know what a piece of land should be if you're going to try to genuinely manage it, whether that could be 10 acres or whether that could be, it has to be 100 acres. In my opinion, anytime anybody asks me, like, should I pass this deer or not? I don't ask land. I ask, okay, well, if you genuinely want to pass him, see if they get any bigger, what are the odds you think that he can actually live compared to getting on the neighbors or doesn't live on you, or you only saw him one time? If you only saw him one time, I'm going to tell you probably should shoot him. So I don't know land, but what is the number one thing that you think is the best thing somebody can be doing for a management purpose to grow larger deer as well as mature deer, not just antlers? Do you guys have a number one thing?
It's a really good question.
Above all else, I know it's a big one because there are going to be 17 other things to do. But
yeah, that's a really big question. A lot of pressure on it. I think the big thing that comes down to that we kind of talked about at first was the big thing is what I tell folks is like if you're sitting in that stand, you're sitting in that ground blind, and you will get excitement or joy out of harvesting that deer, that's a successful harvest.
Yep.
You know, there's folks at all different stages. I'm a really early stage hunter still. I want to harvest as much as I can. I'm so happy with whatever I get. I was really blessed last year with 2 bucks, archery first year. So it was like super awesome.
Last year's your first year?
Yeah.
Now I can understand why you're saying that the spike is very unique.
Yeah.
I'm like, okay.
And I hunt public, and where I was hunting public, I saw a ton of spikes, and we're also in this like unique situation in Iowa where if a deer doesn't have a branched antler, they count towards your antlerless tag.
Right. Yep.
So I look at it as, it could count as a doe harvest.
You and him get together, and not a spike is going to be inside anywhere to be found.
But personally, I get enjoyment out of it. You know, there's a lot of talk of not harvesting spikes as far as genetics, but there's also, you know, data and science that shows that spikes can grow out of that first year, unless there's damage to the pedicle or something that's causing it to not be able to grow year after year.
See, I like bringing along people that use big words like pedicle.
Yeah, we just say the base.
So I think what's important too is you're getting at the bigger picture, right? And so when I'm talking bigger picture, especially in a state like Iowa, where so much of it is not a natural landscape anymore, so much of it has been devoted to agriculture and those sorts of things, is what are you actually doing for land management? I mean, the deer is an important question. A lot of people love deer and what's going on to it, but are you providing quality habitat for those deer? Are you, doing any timber stand improvements? Are you looking for invasive species out on your property? Is there any prescribed fires going on? And ultimately, no matter what size property you have going on there, then the conversation is going to start including neighbors. Deer move. We know they move. What's going on across the fence? Are you getting along with your neighbor? We should strive to try to get along with our neighbors. I know that doesn't always happen, but it's a bigger picture. It's a bigger picture than just any one property. You can own 3,000 acres, and it's still a bigger picture than just what's going on in your property.
Yep.
That's great. I was totally going to circle that way too, as far as like habitat management. And, the big things are making sure, seeing what's around you, seeing what your neighbors are doing. Are you providing bedding? Are you providing food? Is there agriculture around? Agriculture is great for feeding deer, unfortunately, also for cover, but that's only there for a small amount of years. So like planting natives, having areas where there's native forbs coming up, providing nutrition for deer kind of in every stage too of the season is really great.
Yeah. And as you guys know, their gut microbiome relies on a diverse diet, right?
Yep.
And there's so many of our timbers in the Midwest, especially in Iowa, that, it's great. It's oak and hickory woods that are coming up. But if you actually go out there and do a plant count, maybe you've got 5 to 10 species because it's been grazed really heavily in the past or it's been sprayed or whatever. In a native like oak savanna, we'd be talking 300 different species of forbs coming up, greening up at different times of the year, producing all sorts of stuff. Those would have different mineral contents, different vitamins, greening at different times of the year. That would affect their nutrition that they're getting throughout the year, not just at one point.
So right now, what I'm finding very interesting is that I just asked you how you could grow bigger deer and more mature deer. And this is the first time I've had anybody genuinely just jump over passing, trying to do this, trying to get a certain age class of deer in there, doe management, this, that, and the other. It's the very first time I've heard anybody go straight to land management. And so from what you guys just said, there's like 5 different things. Okay, you could be putting food in, you could be putting some form of shelter, bedding in, your timber stand improvement, water, I'm assuming, if there's no water sources there. what would be, I mean, or I guess what is the checklist? So if I've got a piece of property and I need to find what those things are, I can look at the neighbors and say, okay, they've got 10 acres of cornfield or a big ag field or something, but there's no timber over there. And I've got timber, I've got area for food, but there's nothing on it. And whatever, I've got the ability to do some. So what are my checklists of like, this is what I need for the best habitat for healthy deer and larger deer and just a healthier population altogether?
Yeah. Oh, it's a great question. What comes first? The very first thing I'd recommend to anybody, and actually it's fun talking to DNR foresters. If you haven't reached out to your local DNR forester, I'd highly recommend it.
Just
awesome.
did it. Yeah.
Matter of fact,
Good
I
deal.
just have the plan. I didn't bring it in here, but Angel, do you know, or Angel Brown, I think it was.
Okay.
I think that's who it is. Now she might not be with you guys because I think she's federal.
Oh, okay.
That's who the DNRC or the NRCS sent me to her and said, let's have you. And so when you said the invasive species, we're talking, this was in the timber. That's where she told me to start. She's like, okay, and you're not any different than anyone else. The multiflora rose is kind of everywhere. And so she gave me a list of things that said, okay, because it's a multi-year. I mean, any of this stuff that we're getting ready to talk about or that we are talking about is not going to be something that you can do probably in a year. I mean,
she was there for the timber stand, right?
yes.
Like
I mean,
specifically
looking at the timber around my house.
So that's one portion of what we're going to be trying to do. Right.
So the forester, whether it's through U.S. Forest Service or through DNR Forestry or whatever state, folks are looking at, great starting point. We also have a private lands biologist that can come out and look at bigger picture. So the interactions between maybe it's some crop ground and potential prairie or CRP and timber. And I guess where I want to go with this is let's take stock of what's there first. Let's actually figure it out instead of just saying, oh yeah, I got timber. Okay. So is it bottomland timber? Is it full of basswood and silver maples and cottonwoods? Or are we talking about, an oak hickory forest? Are we talking there's savanna remnant? What are we actually talking about? Let's take stock of where we're at, and then we can start prescribing certain things on top of it from there. Whether that's, hey, let's get a fire to go through here and see what comes up first and what the response is from native plants, and that'll set back your honeysuckle, your multiflora rose. Or maybe it's something else. Let's work with that individual who has that expertise and build that relationship there. That's where I start, is what's going on the land, because that's going to be your future investment into that property in the long term. We can certainly dive down into, and I think we will, about doe management, about what you're doing from the tree stand. But let's look at the long term first.
Yeah.
And I was going to mention too, the private lands biologist. I mean, that's a really great resource here. That's available to anyone with private land. That they'll come out, they'll work with you, they'll help you take inventory of what's there and how to improve it. I think sometimes when we're thinking about growing like bigger deer, how do we get bigger, more mature, older deer? The big thing is trying to throw a bunch of things all at once to improve. Yep. But what really needs to happen are like little changes over time to kind of tweak and see how the land is working with the deer.
Yep.
Gotcha.
Big part with mature deer is just going to be genetics. We're blessed here in Iowa as far as deer genetics. So we have that in our favor. And then, the other big side is land management, thinking about how long-term that's going to play a role.
So I think that is, with how you guys are explaining that, is a really, really good thing for listeners to hear, because the vast majority of people I talk to, which we talk to quite a few people, especially the podcast, they're reaching out, asking questions about different things because we like to talk about them like this on the podcast. And I think just about everybody's first thoughts when they have a piece of land is food plots. I need to get food, or there's not much food there. For the long time, I didn't feel as though a food plot was all that beneficial unless you could get it where it was just the right something different or growing really well where the deer wanted to come through it. Now, my thought process on that has changed significantly after strategizing and putting them in specific places and maybe having different fields and things like that. It's a variety. But I think doing that first, we have a piece, one of the places that the forest lady came in and checked it out and everything. We totally did that backwards, in my opinion. I did it backwards. Is we didn't have a ton of deer on it, but there's a good chunk of timber on it. there wasn't really any food on it either. And so for the past 2 years, I've been planting and planting and planting, trying to get stuff. I've got it to like 11 acres of food. And I'm like, oh, this is wonderful. I've got all kinds of food. Hearing what you guys are talking about now with how important your timber stand is, I would have never started with food. I would have started with the timber because they don't bet on it. They bet on the neighbors. Or they go elsewhere because no matter how much food I put in there, no matter how good the food plots are, they're not staying. They come to it. They're never going to stay there. And so for anybody that is listening, that if you get your stereotype of you got to put food plots in the ground or whatever, it might be more worth looking at the thing that you can't physically see it grow differently or whatever else that helps the deer come and stay longer. That's the ultimate goal, is to get them to stay longer and have a more healthy environment to live in. The only reason I say that is because I think just about everybody goes food plots. That's what I'm doing the moment they get land. And I think you'd be much more beneficial to, if you need to, improve your timber than you would food.
Well, I think, and I'll just use myself. So when I bought ground, I had never had any land until we moved here to Iowa. And the first thing that you're thinking was put in food, but you're also, that's not only are you going to hopefully help the deer, but you're going to get to shoot one because they're going to come to it. So it's kind of like, okay, I get to, but there is something to be said for when you start doing, and whether a guy has 5 acres or 50 acres or 500 acres, there is something about putting in your own food plot and seeing a deer walk out in it, and then maybe getting to harvest a deer or two off of that. It is not like just going out, and I'm not, I mean, I grew up my whole life hunting public land, both for whitetail deer and then everything else out west. It's just way different when you feel a different connection with those deer. And so I get the naming the deer and knowing who they, because you get to learn and see who they are. A lot of people make fun and say TV did that. You know, the Outdoor Channel put all these people, you know, you're naming deer and all. I don't care about that. It's really not. I mean, because like the food plots, me and him have worked on them this year. Easton has done a majority of, we've changed what we've got in food plots, and to a fine degree of how much nitrogen, how much this, hey, look, this is growing. We got some that we fenced in this year in electric fence, and you can go look at the beans that are inside the electric fence as to the beans outside, and it's 2-foot difference in growth, you know, and that's pretty cool to see.
That's awesome that anything that's going to take somebody along that stewardship of their land and get them actually out there caring for what's happening and seeing the results. You go out there and do a project and you see how it changes over time. That's something as a public land manager and having that background, even on the public lands, when we do things over time and seeing those results, it is phenomenal, and you grow that connection. And I don't think food plots are necessarily a bad thing at all. I'm not saying that. I think being smart about where you put them in relation to the other cover types is important. And at the same time, I would say that, again, deer are browsers. They eat a lot of different types of plant material, right? And so anything you can do to increase that plant diversity, whether it's in your prairie, whether it's in your timber, that's also a food source. It's a food source at a different time of year. And so we're not only worried about what the deer are eating in the fall, right? We're worried about what they're eating in the spring when green up first happens, what they're eating during the summer when that doe is producing milk for those fawns. Like, we got to be thinking through all that. On the flip side, and this is where we really come into play, what are they eating outside of your property too? Do you have this timber, but then they're just going on to your neighbors and only eating those beans that aren't fenced off? Because that's when we get the phone call, right? And that's when our program starts kicking in and we're working with farmers. So that's when, unfortunately, just the realm a lot of times that we have to look at doe management comes into play. And so I guess I just want to throw that expectation out there that no matter what you do on your property, deer are going to move. And they're a natural resource that belongs to everybody. So it's a good thing they move because they belong to everybody, but they're also going to go on to the neighbors at some point in their life. And if we aren't doing any sort of doe management or healthy things for deer on our side of the fence, and they're just going across to that guy who's only row crop, and they're doing a lot of damage over there, it might lead to a situation where then they're getting a lot of extra tags or out-of-season shooting permits and something, and then all of a sudden your named buck gets killed in July because it was damaging something, and there's a state law for this program. Yeah. So we need to consider that side of it too.
Yeah, for sure.
So whatever depredation program that is, how do we get that so that we we've got some velvet deer, that are kind of mean. We might need to take care of one or two. No, I'm kidding. Totally kidding.
I was going to say it's a crop damage.
Right.
I've got beans, man.
So while you brought up the subject, and it's still controversial about shooting does.
What is controversial about it?
Guys still argue. There's still some people of the belief, don't shoot does because you won't have any deer. If you kill the does, you're not going to have any more deer. In a few years, you're going to kill them because you shouldn't be killing the ones that are reproducing, is what they're saying. And so and I know you deal with a lot of it because we have dealt with a lot of it. And Catherine, I'm assuming you do too, as far as numbers and things like that. Is there something that we can put on? And I know it changes, but how do you guys base, let's say, a 40-acre piece? How do you come in and say, okay, you guys need to kill X amount of does off of this? Is it countywide? Is it that region, or how do you guys go about doing that?
Yeah.
Good questions.
It is. And we got to start at one level and then we work
down.
so there's statewide tags, right? We got your statewide. They're any sex tags. They're not buck tags, by the way. Okay.
Yep.
So that's important. And then we go down to county quotas.
Is
right?
that in hopes that somebody, if they aren't able to shoot a buck or something, they just shoot a doe anyways? Or
Yeah.
Well, you have the opportunity to
For
harvest a
either.
doe.
It's
Yep.
okay,
Yep.
yeah.
You have that opportunity. You can use it in any county right now. Every hunter here in Iowa, you can get one archery season and one gun season, any sex tag.
Okay.
So we have the opportunity to harvest 2 any sex bucks, usually is how folks look at it here,
Yeah.
during those seasons.
Right.
Let's say you're in Pocahontas County and there's no doe tags and you're looking to, manage your property and you're thinking, well, in my little spot, the county doesn't have any doe tags, but I've got a lot of deer right here in this 600 acres. That's an opportunity for a doe harvest. Okay. But then we come down and analyze the county stuff. So we're looking at how many calls are we getting through the depredation program? What are our spotlight surveys showing? What are bow hunter surveys showing? What's the harvest looking like in those counties? We have public meetings.
Yep. What are local staff hearing from folks in that area? What are conservation officers seeing on their routes? Jace would be really great to speak about, the statewide doe management and kind of how that's set. But that's very specific and changes. So then there's counties that have no antlerless tags additional to their any sex, and then there's counties that have, a certain number, anywhere from 0 up to probably like 3,000.
Right.
We have a lot.
Madison County is over 2,000, I think.
Absolutely. And that just comes down to what we're seeing for deer numbers in that county and people utilizing those to manage those deer at a countywide level. And now the depredation program, that comes down and that's more farm specific. So we come down and we look at what's going on a farm with that farmer, look at the deer damage that's going on, what are the neighbors doing, what's actually going on right here. And that's where Catherine goes out and meets with them one-on-one and has that conversation, and they get their input, and we look at the damage that's happening there.
Yeah. So the depredation program, kind of how it works is we receive phone calls from producers, whether that's row crop or high value commodity crops like vegetables or Christmas tree farms. We just were at a vineyard pretty recently that are experiencing deer damage. So we kind of field those calls usually this time of year, kind of through kind of when crops get harvested.
Yep.
So again, fluctuates based on what they're growing. And we'll schedule a site visit. We try to make it as timely as possible, within 1 to 2 weeks, get out to the farm, as long as there's enough damage there. So the way the law is written is there has to be $1,000 worth of damage or damage that will exceed $1,000 to be a part of this program. And so we go out, we do the site visit. We usually try to meet with the producer there. It's just a way to interact with them, get some more information about the farm. What does hunting look like here? How many hunters did you have out here? What seasons did they hunt? How many bucks versus does were harvested? And then we can kind of gauge what seasons are being utilized, what aren't. And we'll kind of do a site visit. Most folks like to drive us around in, their Kubota or Ranger. Makes for some easier times, but then half the time we're also kind of hiking through, actually mapping out the damage and really assessing on a large scale, how many acres are damaged out here from the deer. So we're also looking for other damage like raccoon damage, beaver damage. Those don't qualify. That $1,000 of damage is from deer damage.
How do you tell the difference between coon damage and deer damage?
Yeah, good question. So corn's like the best example of it. So raccoons will climb up the stalk and it breaks because they're so heavy trying to eat the ears off the stalk, and it breaks and you'll see them like completely flattened down on the ground or hanging down versus deer are just nipping at the ends.
Yeah. Okay. Now I see why people are like, oh, those coons. I was like, how do you know that?
Well, the first thing that hit me is he's definitely my kid, because that was the same question that was going through my head. Number two, I kind of had the idea. I was pretty sure that was the case.
Yep.
That means that we're seeing a lot of what guys are driving down the road thinking, oh, look at the deer crushing his corn. It's not. It's coons.
Yeah.
If it's knocked down, it's either wind or raccoons. If it's knocked down all one direction, wind.
Yeah.
If it's down on the ground and it's a mess, if you don't want to walk through it, it's raccoons. And you can look at that plant on the ground, go grab that cob, and you'll see where it's just shredded, where it looks like a little kid has pulled it apart and then chewed on it, right? Well, deer's not doing that. So the thing with deer and corn is we have put everything at head height. So why would they change it? They're just going to eat everything at head height, whether it's the initial eating the end of a leaf off, that's the first stage. Then they'll eat that center whorl that would grow up and form that tassel out. They'll eat that growing point. If they miss that point, they'd eat the end of the cob off. So all of that, think about a deer's height. It's all right at head height for them. It's easy. And it's usually from the outside of the field in, too. Raccoons, they're down at that low level. They'll venture out to where the best smelling corn is, and then they'll have their family group, and there'll be a big circle that they bring down.
Yeah, I just found one of those the other day, and I was like, it was in the center of the cornfield. Like, that doesn't make any sense. And now that you're telling me that they will pick, too, I'm like, okay, that makes more sense.
They want that sweet stuff, right?
No
They
kidding.
love it at that milking stage when it's super sweet. So we're actually probably getting to the end in Iowa right now, end of July. We're probably getting the end of raccoon damage. It's probably already happened because it's that milking sweet corn stage is when they really hammer it, and they'll use their nose and go to what smells the best.
Yeah.
Okay, so going back to when you were talking about, you go out to a place and let's just say you've seen that they've got enough money, it's going to damage that.
Yep.
How do you determine the number of does that someone should kill? And then the program that you guys are running, though, this is outside of the normal season, correct? Someone could. I'm not saying it always is, but do you guys first try to kill those numbers through the hunting season, and then if that doesn't work, then you go outside of the season? Or I guess give me a little direction on that.
Yeah, it's a thing we have to be careful about too, because it just changed. So in a minor way, yes, there's different tools available. The basic tool breakdown of the depredation program is there's additional landowner tenant licenses. So those would be $2 a piece for antlerless deer, one extra for each of the seasons. Okay, so that's the first part. Second part are depredation tags that hunters can utilize during the hunting seasons. Now it allows them to utilize more of the seasons. So for instance, with depredation tags, a hunter could go out and buy some of them for antlerless deer for early muzzleloader, and then they could go and buy some more for shotgun 1 and go out again for gun 2. So it's more opportunities, but they're during the seasons. The third component is out-of-season shooting permits. So those are for when the damage is occurring right now. Now, this, and I don't want to dive into politics, but it is important for any hunters, anybody involved with natural resource stuff, to be paying attention what's going through the legislator, the state house in the spring, because that can alter what our program is. It's a state, law. Our program is in state law. And so it was changed just a little bit this year, where it added in that shooting permits are automatically available too. So yes, we want to emphasize hunting, utilizing hunters and that traditional thing, because hunting is the management tool in this state. But there are also out-of-season shooting permits that anybody experiences damage that qualifies for the program would utilize.
Gotcha.
So just in case somebody's wondering, I think I don't know if have you ever used some of the depredation tags?
I did. Yeah, I had a landowner call me, and said, hey, and he doesn't hunt, and he said, I just got major crop damage, and so you guys had issued him X amount of tags and said, would you come shoot some of these does? And I was like, sure. And so I went over and did that. For me, it was a way of solidifying a relationship with the landowner. I was doing him a favor. It wasn't hunting to me. I mean, I killed some deer, but I didn't look at it as I was out there trying to like sneak up on these deer and stuff. They were just coming to the field, and he asked me to get rid of them, and I was like more than happy. And then I just did the same thing. I took him to a meat locker, and so I did that. In turn, he let me come back and hunt, what I would consider hunting. And so I thought it was a good deal, I mean, and I don't know, it was a couple of years that you guys had issued him those tags, and I did that for him, and then he didn't get any more. But I think the numbers went down. So it worked.
That was a long time ago, too.
Yeah, it was probably
last
8
year,
or 10 years ago.
Or not last year, probably 2 years ago. I had a place to have permission. I felt as though it was a little confusing. And the reason I say that is because the farmer, I don't think, really understood exactly what was going on. He knew that he wanted to get depredation tags, and he wanted to use them. Granted, he also has a very high hatred for deer in general, so he didn't get as many as he wanted. But he got like 5 or 10 or something and asked if I wanted any of them. To me, I didn't really understand it about the way he told me about it. But the only reason I'm saying this is because if you are in Iowa or something, I think you should be careful about don't get yourself into something stupid. And that is, he's just handed me wrote my name on them or whatever, handed me the tags, and something I had to fill out. Yes. Yes, there you go.
We usually fill them out for folks.
Okay, it was partially filled out, but he said he had to put my name on it or whatever, or something like that. I don't know what it was. And so I look at this, and I'm like...
Oh, I don't have it.
It was colored, if that helps you. Was
it for the summer?
To this. No, it was during the season.
This, then.
He told me I didn't have to do anything with it, okay? So I'm like... This is I'm telling you, he does not understand it. Okay, so he was like, I think they told me you're supposed to do something, but I'm not sure exactly what it is. And so again, the reason I'm doing this is to help somebody not get into a situation where you do something dumb. So I got the tag, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, okay, he's definitely been issued this by the DNR, but I don't think this is technically him being able to issue me a physical tag. It just doesn't add up.
Yeah, and you're right about that.
It or whatever, and I could tell, okay, so now I learned that I could take it to like a Shields or whatever, and they would give me a tag. I think it was just cheaper, maybe, or something is what it was. So I'm just warning anybody that is in Iowa, and you have your typical old farmer guys that are like, yeah, you can do this or whatever, and may not be doing it out of being or doing something against the law, more so if they don't completely understand the situation. You still need a tag. You're getting whatever the depredation tag is.
We call this like a voucher.
That's kind of what
so every one of these is like a coupon that you bring to a vendor.
Yep, and then you have to get your physical tag.
And then you can buy your physical tag from the vendor. Yes. But yes, that is something we definitely run into. I've tried.
I want to clarify, because I think Easton's talking about something, and it's happening, and I'm going to just throw some of the farmers under the bus.
Oh, Lord, here we go. This is...
All right, we got to remain neutral.
Yeah. Some of them are going to tell you, and this is to protect the hunter out there, I think, is some of them are going to tell you because they have a hatred for deer. They don't like the deer because the deer are competing with their livelihood, and so they want them all gone. They want to exterminate the deer. So they're going to tell you that that's a tag, and you don't need to turn it in. You don't need to do anything. Just shoot them. Don't do that. That's what Easton is telling you. That's what Catherine is telling you, that there is a process so that we can keep track not only to kill deer, but knowing how many are being killed and where they're getting harvested at. Don't let a farmer talk. And I'm not just saying just farmers. They're
anybody. Anytime you get into any tag, any state, anything where it is anything other than what you walked into the store to buy a tag, make sure you do your research, because you will get into some trouble.
If it sounds too good to be true, like you don't have to do anything, then it probably is,
Yeah. And so let me slow it down and back it up just a little bit. So for right from the get-go, right on here, it says this is not a license. So we're trying to make that clear, but we talk the farmer through it. But you're right, a lot of times the farmers aren't hunters themselves. And so there's this, we try to provide information. We probably need to keep advancing that, doing a better job, because it needs to go from the farmer to the hunter, right? We want that farmer actually engaged with the hunters. Sometimes what we see is we give them all this paperwork and they say, all right, here you go, hunter. And then they're not invested in the process. They don't see deer as something that we manage along with everything else, along with, whether it's weeds or planting dates or any of that stuff. We want it to be part of that process because deer are here to stay. We're not interested in there being no deer in Iowa, even though some of the farmers we work with are interested.
Absolutely.
and they'll tell us that. So that's why it's also a conversation with that farmer as we're looking at the damage on how many tags to issue. So there is some of this science and statistics that are going on. You can look at a property you have, and you could harvest between 20 and 25% of your adult does, and that'll just keep that population steady if nothing else is happening. So if you're not having a big hemorrhagic disease outbreak or something like that. So when you are seeing or observing your does during this time of year in the summer, look at the does, not the fawns with her. How many mature does are there out there? That's going to give you a baseline. And we're going out and visiting a farm for 2 hours. These farmers are out there all the time. The hunters probably have more experience on that property than we do. So we need to trust and build that relationship with that farmer on what are you actually seeing? Here's what the damage is showing. How many deer are getting harvested from year to year out there? We use that as a starting point, and we say, all right, let's up it, because you still have 4 acres of corn that's gone, and you've been harvesting, 5 does every year. Obviously, we need to do more.
Right.
In a perfect world, I think that we would start by saying, let's get hunters out there, especially in the early hunting season. So let's use the depredation program. We can incentivize it a little bit for these hunters by giving them access to a cheaper tag. These once they pay for it in at the vendor, it's $7. So that's a half price, well, even less than half price tag from your first antlerless tag. So you go in and get there, and the other incentive is they could all of a sudden use early muzzleloader season. So that's pre-rut. The deer haven't been moved around as much. The does a lot of them are still in the same place that they would have been in the summer. So you're actually harvesting that local doe. And something that we really stress, and again, I don't think this always gets from us to the farmer to the hunter, time of year matters. Deer move. We established that at the beginning, right? Deer move around. And when the crops are getting harvested through September, October, November, that's 90% of the state cover disappears.
Yep.
90% in Iowa. So other states, I don't think, deal with it to the same point that Iowa does. That's a lot of cover that just is gone. That moves deer around a lot. You have plants going dormant. You have weather changes. You have hunters out in the field. Even pheasant hunters in October going through a CRP field. All of those things move deer around, and then you have the rut come through, which moves them around even more.
Right.
If you're doing all your doe management in January, I mean, yes, in a neighborhood, bigger landscape picture, that's still a time where you could shoot some does and have that impact. But as far as the does that are producing fawns on your property, we don't know where they are. They could be 10 miles away. They might have gotten pushed out and they're somewhere else completely. So if we can get youth hunters out there, if we can use the archery season, early muzzleloader to utilize these depredation tags. So we're using hunters, free resource. These people are looking and asking for places to go. The number one complaint we get from hunters is I don't have access to property.
Right.
I would love to shoot does. Nobody's letting me in. So the farmers have to let people in. They got to use these depredation tags, and let's use them smart.
So this begs a question. What is the deal with the January antlerless tag or the extended tag? If it's better to shoot them or be harvesting them early in the season, because this is relatively new, right? I mean, that's 3-4 years now that
it's come and gone. It was here, back in the late 2000s and early 20-teens. Is that how you say that? 20-teens.
It sounded good when you said it. So
let's go with the
I meant what you knew, so we're good.
So it's come and gone, and the reason it's come and gone is because initially, when it was something that the DNR had kind of a lever to control, it was something that was implemented when deer numbers were really high, or in areas where we want to get some extra harvest or pressure for CWD or something like that. It's changed a little bit. Again, what happens through the State House matters. So now there's a law that says if there's any of those countywide tags left in a county, there automatically is a January season. That is new. That's absolutely new because of a law that got put in place. So before it was DNR regulation, now it's state law. And it can be good on a wide scale. Think neighborhood or county scale. If we have a Wayne County that's got super high deer numbers, that January season can be effective. you might shoot a few shed antler bucks. Less than 10% of what you're going to shoot
I'd
would
say
be
5 last year, less than 5, I think.
Yeah, you will shoot
It was
some,
less than 5%.
I think so.
but
It's still scary.
yeah,
You know, as a guy, if you are managing and you know this deer has made it, but he sheds early, you know, you're like, oh lordy, because typically a hunter's sitting out there, they want to kill the biggest whatever, even if it's just the biggest doe in the field, you know, and the biggest doe turns out to be a buck. So
you got to be careful for it. And people who are really into deer management, there's some cues to look in. How's that animal walking? How thick is its body? Is it alone or with the rest of them? I mean, there's things you can look at. If it's somebody that just wants to kill deer because they hate deer, they're not looking at those things.
Right.
So absolutely, you got to pay attention to that. But again, if you're looking at crop damage, timing matters. If you're looking at county-wide big scale, January can still be effective.
Okay, fair enough.
well, like you said, I mean, this is where it really pays to be not a politician, but pay attention to what's going on in politics. And we'll still voice our opinion. We're not fans of the January season, the late season, just for the reason that some bucks get killed.
Outside of the bigger deer, I just feel like most people don't pay the younger bucks are the ones that are.
Yeah, you don't know.
Risk.
Yeah, you don't know what that deer would have turned into.
They don't look incredibly big. I wasn't even talking about antler size. I'm just talking about the fact that when they're shedded, their pedicles aren't huge softballs sitting on their head. That's really easy to tell. Those are the ones I feel like probably get shot the most. But at 5%, that ain't very much.
He used the word pedicle.
Yeah,
he got it from Catherine.
Hey, that's great.
Now, I will say, I do want to clarify that Iowa does not own all of the farmers that hate animals, because I've lived in 4 states, and I have had the same comment from landowners in all states, including antelope. I mean, I knocked on a guy's door one day and said, can I antelope? Absolutely you can. Shoot every one you see. And that's my rule. And I was like...
Guess I'm going to get kicked off.
And you can tell them, hey, I can't do that. I get 2 tags. I know how many tags you get. I'm telling you to shoot them all. And you just have to talk with them, because those are the guys you do want to talk to, because they do want the hunter. They do want them to shoot, but you just got to explain. I'll get my son to come with me. We can hopefully kill 4 or whatever it is, a buck and a doe and that kind of thing. But it's been every state. Virginia, same thing. I had a guy tell me that there. In Arkansas, it was no different. And here, so you just got to look at their perspective, and their perspective is they're competing. That's what they see. A deer is just a nuisance. So
we've gone over a lot. And we've kind of gotten a little off track, I think. But as far as management goes, we've got multiple practices on the land side that we can be doing, whether that's timber stand improvement, adding food sources, things like that we talked in the beginning. Doe management is a big one, which also could just be associated with the population management, so that there's healthy amount of deer there. What would be a ideal buck to doe ratio, real quick, before we go to the next one?
I don't have a good answer.
I think it's arguable.
It is hard to measure. Absolutely, it's a difficult thing to measure. I want to go down to just look at how many does you're harvesting based on what you're observing out there. If you have a way to do a survey that you can actually start getting some numbers, like not just, hey, I have 3 trail cameras out there and this is what I see, because you're missing deer, right? You're not catching them all. So go off of what you're routinely seeing out there for does during the summer, and then kind of go off of that as far as, do you want it steady? Okay, then look at the 20% mark. Are you needing to harvest some more does to get that population down? Let's look at the 35 to 40% mark for how many of them to take out. Let's go with that instead of looking at the ratios, because that's going to be different based on time of year and what's moved into the area.
Fair enough. Okay. Do you have another question on that, or no? You look like you're thinking.
I do, because I guess I would just like to hear your guys' opinion. Maybe this isn't and that is, because we get a lot of people that ask, should I be trying to get to a 1-to-1? Meaning, if they go out and see 2 deer, should I see 1 buck and 1 doe? Because
I think that's pretty unrealistic.
It is unrealistic, I think. But at the same time, there are other people that will say, well, when there's multiple does, meaning let's just say 5-to-1, okay, well then now I'm going to pull bucks from everywhere else because I've got all the does. Or if you are at 1-to-1, or let's just say you're at 1-to-5 bucks to does, meaning there's almost no does, are all your bucks going to leave to go try to find, because see, I like it when it is somewhat even, because I do want those bucks on their feet having to travel. I do feel like if you have too many does, then they don't have to do anything. And I'll use a deer at home a few years ago, because we have a lot of deer around my house. I mean, just without a doubt, we have a tremendous amount of deer. And we had a deer named Junior, and he didn't have to go anywhere to find a doe. And the reason that we knew this, or just solidified it, was 4 different times or 5 different times we saw him during the rut, like November 4th to the 11th, let's say, come out of the same trail with a doe on multiple different days, meaning, so it wasn't like the same doe. He wasn't having to do anything, and so his core area that deer was walking was probably less than 20 acres.
So if just for reference for everybody, that could also be a one-off type of situation.
Yeah,
but that is something that we could tell that was in that area. We knew there's a lot of does. He didn't really have to work for them.
Right.
But that doesn't mean that if you see a deer doing that, it may just be his personality. That could be it too. So there's a lot of factors that go into that.
Absolutely.
And that is the only deer we've ever seen like that. So except for like maybe one other that I can think of, but not habitual.
But then you get the other one that he's here. We have another deer. This one's still alive, and we see him 5 miles apart. He'll be at one farm during the rut, and then a few days later he's at a different farm. And we just happen to be able to hunt the other farm, or we would never know where he went. We just think he disappeared.
Yeah. That's one of the things I love about working with wildlife is we have to manage on a population level, and we talk big trends, right? Like as biologists, we're a little bit afraid to go down to the individual animal sometimes because we're supposed to view these as a big picture. But each animal has their own characteristics, and there's quite a bit of data looking at bucks, especially in the change in their movement behavior going into the rut. There's so much variety, right? You'll have that buck that stays and maybe they're only in a 100-acre area that they're moving around. You have another one that's in a 3-mile corridor or whatever. And there's a lot of variables we can't measure. Maybe Junior meets Hammerhead, and Hammerhead's a jerk, and he kicks him out of that area. Maybe you only have that many does on your property right now because they just moved off the neighbor's property because they harvested their corn, and that's the only reason now all of a sudden you have this influx of does because it moved those family groups. Timing matters. It's tricky. Watch, observe what's going on your property. Take it from there. Again, you guys know your property better than we do coming in.
Yeah, what's going on year round?
Yeah, gotcha.
For sure.
I think a big thing too, and a lot that I hear from folks is that they don't want to harvest does because they want to have mature bucks, because the more does you have, the more bucks you'll draw into your property. And that can almost sometimes be a downer for you, because if you have too high of a deer density on your property, antler quality will go down because they're,
Can I argue that?
Yeah,
that
sure.
Theory? I think it's awful theory. For multiple reasons. Not what you're saying, what they're saying.
Oh,
about,
yep.
I'm not against
Okay.
No, about that you want tons and tons of does. Because every time that I have seen that on properties where our does have gotten out of hand, one of them has been and now that you're saying that right there, it makes me wonder that I know there's been some more hunting pressure around it, but at the same time, we have never been able to get the does in check, and slowly the antler growth or not growth, but the quality of deer has steadily gone downhill until we've been like, I think the last couple of years, we've gone ham trying to shoot does, and we're starting to see a little bit more of a progression back to what it used to be. And then the other thing I would say is during the rut, the places that we have the most does is the worst place to hunt. Like, I absolutely hate it. Like, I would happily take vacation during the rut on those places because I don't even want to hunt it because you don't see deer doing anything. And I think that my theory behind that is not really a theory. I think there's so many does, the buck gets done with one and he walks 10 yards and there's another one that's ready to roll too. And so now he's stuck with that one. And I don't see any of these places. I've never seen an influx of bucks coming to the place because of more does. I don't really think that that's natural for just, it's not bait. I mean, it's not like there's just, that part doesn't connect with me. And I tend to see much, much more fun hunting seasons, more deer moving around, more bucks, more does doing different things when it's a more even population. And your rut is a lot more interesting. And I think that it makes the bucks move. Makes him have to get up and go find something instead of just sitting there and waiting for him to come to him.
Right. Yeah, and that's in some good information out of, well, now it's National Deer Association, used to be Quality Deer Management Association, looking at getting those buck to doe ratios in check, where you're getting it as close as you can to 1-to-1. I think that might not be achievable everywhere, right? But you start seeing different rutting behaviors. Absolutely. What you're seeing has been studied scientifically. And you'll see, maybe more fighting and competition amongst those bucks, instead of them just being able to kind of have their own area that they can it's almost more like mule deer, right? With a harem and that sort of thing. So it absolutely affects the dynamics of what's going on there. But also, again, we keep talking about not during the hunting season, right? It's because we're biologists, we're studying all the time. So those social pressures in that bachelor group and the bachelor groups interacting with family groups during the spring and the summer, that's almost more interestingly what's going to drive your antler development is social stresses, right? Those animals are too close to each other. There's tons of food in Iowa, right? We are not lacking for food. But if there's too many bullies on the playground, it doesn't matter how big the playground is. And that it changes their behavior, changes their hormone levels, all of those sorts of things, which then can affect those antler outputs.
Makes sense.
All right. And so this one will be more of a direct question, biology related, and that is talking about bucks. Is there a particular age where you guys believe that they are fully mature? I mean, I think there's a lot of data out there. I think we all know that 4-5 area, we're getting into a prime deer, and we have been the belief that 5 seems to be what we have seen, seems to be, or I will say, because I think Easton might argue a year different, but 5 years old seems to be our deer's peak. Okay, and that they might hold at 6, they might grow a little bit. I'm just saying we're not seeing it. In my opinion, I've seen 2 to 3 huge jumps, 3 to 4 possibly another huge jump. Then they don't quite do as much after that. They may still jump, but not as significantly. What age would you guys say that people, if you are getting to that point where you're trying to take out the older deer and let the younger ones come, what age would you tell people to start shooting those deer, start looking at trying to kill those bucks, if you have that kind of knowledge of them?
Mm-hmm. So I think you guys, your observations again are matching what kind of the science is saying and the studies are saying. Deer are going to keep growing their body up and through age 4 about. I mean, that's, when you think about what antlers are, that's a huge amount of growth, a huge mineral growth. Like, I mean, that's a lot of energy getting put out to that every year. And they're doing it at the same time as growing their body through age 4. So after 4 is when we see their body, their skeletal structure, those things are fully developed. So now more of that growth can go up into those antlers. So
is that variable by chance?
I'm sure it is.
Like
everything,
skeletal structure.
Always question science. I love it.
I'm just curious because that would explain sometimes why some dudes are like, oh, this deer from 4 to 5 just didn't do anything, or one was a year off from what the ages were, that maybe he doesn't do anything at all. That might be genetics, but I'm just curious if their skeletal structure is like a gap there. Like it could be 4 or 5 years old somewhere in that area, but continue.
I'd say there's got to be enough genetic variability out there that's going to change. And just like kids, growing up, everybody kind of matures at a different set. But it's also probably impacted from that very first year of their growth. If this is another component of doe management we didn't get into yet, and it could go down a whole nother rabbit hole. If there's too many does in an area and they're not bred in the first breeding cycle, and it takes another month, they go into another breeding cycle, and maybe they're bred then, or maybe it's even a month later, that means your fawn drop is delayed by a couple months, possibly into the summer. That means before that first winter that they haven't had as much body growth into it. There's the ups and downs of growth period, right? There's tons of food in the summer. They're eating all the time. They're growing like crazy. Once that winter comes and food is a little more scarce, they're putting more energy to just staying alive, staying warm. That changes their growth. So then that is going to have reverberations through year 1.5, 2.5, 3.5. So there's a few different things that can impact you there. In the big picture, generally, we're saying get through year 4.5 for body growth. After that, it's all maximized into antler growth, and then it's incredibly variable as far as what happens in older age and going forward from there. So that would make your 5.5 the true trophy class of deer, if that's what you're looking at.
Gotcha.
But like Catherine said before, everybody's trophy is a little different.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah,
For
and
sure.
it depends on a lot of variables. I work down at the Auburn Deer Lab. I got my master's down there, and we had a buck that, I'm going to guess on his ages here, but he peaked at 6.5, declined at 7.5, and peaked even higher at 8.5, just given, the nutrition that was around and his stress that year. But it was kind of crazy to see him drop down in antler quality and then peak back up.
Yep.
Yeah, that is interesting.
And I mean, that's a captive deer facility where they're getting all
So they
of their
can
needs
measure
met.
it very easily.
Yep,
Yeah.
yep. We tranquilize them, measure them every year.
Yeah.
So that was fun.
Interesting.
I would support the state doing a state study where, like, just to follow some of them. I've said that before. I don't want to hunt them, but I would love to chip some deer just to see what they do, and maybe even paint them orange so no one can shoot them, and say,
Orange
okay,
vest, man.
yeah, I just want to know, what he does exactly. No more guessing, because there's even sometimes where, like, that's the same buck. I don't know if it is or not. Yeah, I think it definitely is, and we'll argue that. Now, there's no doubt. Like this deer behind you that we were talking about, KB, he grew exactly the same basically every single year. And then I have one set at home from a buck that I killed and I had every set of antlers up until he was 6 and when we killed him. And but he grew absolutely identical every year. He didn't add any stickers. He didn't do anything, but it was cool to be able to see that, and know that deer. And we learned a ton about him, about where he went and stuff like that. So I do agree when you say there's individual deer, there's a character, there's, just like us, they have different demeanors. I'm going to go do this. Some are mean, and just want to pound on the other deer, run them off and stuff like that. So,
yeah. No, and as far as science goes, we would love to study all sorts of these things. So if you got any listeners that want to shell out for some projects,
You say we're taking donations for that,
but the caveat I'd put out there is any good scientific study or any of that, it only leads to more questions. That's kind of my favorite part of science is what's the next question after that?
Yeah, that's fair.
what else did we not cover? We covered the ground. We covered talking about doe management. We talked a little bit about bucks.
I do think I had somebody ask me, which I don't know if it's really how much information there is to it, about like certain farms having the same genetics of deer. Or if that's a thing or not, because he was telling me that he had, and I've seen it on some places too, but sometimes I feel like it's just a coincidence. I don't know. Like where one place, say 100 acres, consistently has deer with a bunch of junk or something, and then you go to the next farm that's a couple miles away, and that one always has 1 or 2 deer that's got drop tines or whatever else. Is that a common thing? Is that proven that can be a thing? Or the reason I question is because I think Jace on one of our last podcasts that he's with the DNR too. That he's telling us about them moving as far as they did, like as young bucks and everything. And I was like, oh, well, that kind of throws away the theory of the same genetics staying in the area. But what are your guys' thoughts?
It all depends on the buck, their movement, which is not an easy answer. But if there's one dominant mature buck that's gonna stay at the property, stay within a certain area, the genetics can stay there. It can also just be coincidence. When I think of deer with a lot of stickers, sometimes I think of like damage that occurs, whether that's during sparring, during velvet, anything like that.
Is that commonly what causes
No,
okay.
But I'm just saying like it could be.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting. Everything in nature, whether let's almost use the example of like an oak tree instead. All right, like follow me here. I'm going to try something. We'll see where it goes. So oak tree produces all these acorns, right? Most of those acorns fall within an area right around that oak tree, right? But then you have squirrels that'll move some of those acorns out further, right? Yep. Everything in nature kind of works that way. And in the dispersion of genetics in deer is going to be somewhat similar. There's going to be, whether it's through the does in that family group being pretty loyal to an area, that doe wants to come back to that spot where she's successfully raised fawns. That's half the genetics right there. Yep. And she's likely trying to come back to that same spot every year. So that could be the key that's holding it. And then with the different characteristics of bucks, you'll have some that maybe are more of a homebody buck that stays put a little bit more. And if he keeps popping out, youngsters from that area, then it could have a cluster right there. But then you're going to have the sparks that fly out from there as well. And that's super important, because then those two different farms you're talking about, that's what's going to keep them from inbreeding, and for those genetics to flow between the farms as well.
Makes sense.
Because here's something that seems interesting to me is like certain states. I want to say maybe it's Pennsylvania and Wisconsin. Some places like you can't kill an albino deer, but they have quite a few of them. I've seen one here in Iowa ever. Matter of fact, that's the only albino I've ever seen, and I've lived in 4 states and hunted probably 20 for whitetails. And so, but yet in Virginia, piebald, there was lots of them. I mean, it was real, and I honestly think they're kind of prettier than even a solid white one. I mean, because you have no idea what they're going to end up looking like. But it just seemed like in Virginia, I saw several piebalds. Moved to Arkansas, didn't see any. Lived in Montana forever. The only piebald I ever saw there was an antelope, and that was crazy to see, like almost all white antelope. But never saw a deer that was. And then I've never seen a piebald here in Iowa.
Okay. Yeah, and it's, you mentioned like tracking deer. I think it would be really interesting in Iowa, because I do, from what we've seen in other state studies, I do think Iowa's a little bit unique in the amount of egg ground we have and how much open space there is during certain times of the year. And I do think that leads to greater movements on average. I wish there was a study to back that up. That's just from what I'm seeing, working with farmers, hearing hunter stories, and what I'm seeing on the ground. But that's all going to play into how those genetics get spread or how tight the clusters are.
Right. Yeah, I had no idea. I knew it was large, but I didn't realize that we were adding 90% of the cover, not naturally, that we planted it for them. I knew it was large, and I knew that it was very annoying when the farmer leaves his corn in, and I've even gone and asked them, do I need to rent a combine and help you?
That's good that you do that. And, coming back a little bit full circle to what Catherine and I do with working with farmers, it's really interesting where we meet some of those hurdles too when we're out in the field. If we get a phone call in, let's say January, about damage to beans, and it's like, your beans are still in? Like, what are we talking about here? Right. So there's a lot of variability. I think there's a little bit of a spectrum from north to south in the state too on when those things come out. So right. we see all kinds of different stuff out there in the fields of Iowa.
Well, I'm a huge fan. Apparently, I think it was Easton telling me, and then someone else was telling me they're trying to like grow corn that's shorter. We were talking about the wind knocking it over, and I guess I'm growing up, or not growing up, but living in Arkansas for a while. To produce a better cotton crop, they were trying to make more tiers of cotton on a tall stalk.
So get more of it.
So you get more of it. Well, you would think that's what they would try to do with corn. Okay, if we're going to grow an 8-foot ear, we want 10 ears on it. I mean,
that's
8
what
foot.
they did do.
I know, but now what they're doing is they're trying to shorten it so that they don't deal with wind damage and things. I mean,
they're keeping the ears.
They're keeping the ear. Yeah, produce the. But if they can start growing corn that's only 4 foot tall, now those suckers can't live out there and be hidden all the time. So I'm donating money to that cause.
They might tell you that's not a good thing if there's that much cover in cornfields and everything. Maybe those deer need it.
No, not during hunting
season. We good with 4 feet corn?
I will say that the genetics are so interesting. We were talking about weather here before we started, right? These last 4 years of drought, it has been amazing how well the crops have been able to do. And kudos to the people way smarter than me figuring out genetics and crops and whatnot. The one thing that goes on in my mind now, it wouldn't play well in wind, but if we could grow corn that actually has those cobs up out of reach of deer, how would that impact crop damage? And then how would that impact the farmers hating deer? That would be interesting too. It's short corn. That's right at head level for everything. Yeah. Lots of things are going to eat that corn.
Now you just have a bunch of irritated raccoons because we got to climb way up there to tip this thing over. So
they don't care.
I think that's awesome. If we're getting close here, I'm so excited about my wacky fact because you guys have led me right to it.
Oh man!
If you guys have anything you would like to share as a wacky fact too, we normally will put you on the spot, but if you don't have anything, it's all good. So
okay.
We'll let him go first so you can think.
Well, is there anything else though that you guys want, any programs or anything like that you guys want to mention before we get into, because when we get to the wacky fact, we're kind of done. So I want to make sure we give you guys an opportunity. Is there anything that you guys have going on that you want to make mention of that people might not know of? I know one that I want to plug for you guys is the EHD portion of your now on the app, where someone can go in. Not only you can, correct me if I'm wrong.
And register.
You can register and say, hey, we have a deer that that I think has EHD, and let you guys know through the app. And also you can go in and look at and see how many deer have passed through counties, you know.
How many deer were reported.
Yes.
Yep.
Okay.
So it can be done either just online. You can search like Iowa EHD reporting tool. And typically, folks are finding deer now through usually gun seasons, but those mortalities are happening, late summer through the good first hard frost, like really hard frost, not like one cold snap, really hard frost to kill off those midges. So yeah, the Iowa DNR EHD reporting tool, or it's in the toolbox on the app. I'd say something that I know Jace is really interested in, our deer biologist, is if you harvest a deer in Iowa here that has like sloughed hooves or anything like that, if you want to like shoot him an email, he's super interested in trying to figure out how many deer are surviving from EHD, because we're going to start seeing deer survive. So he got some reports last year, but it's just kind of like good info to start keeping track of.
There's some indicators of that?
Mm-hmm. So if their hooves are like sloughed off or cracked or anything like that, sometimes they might have like lesions in their mouth, and it's because they survived the fever and were able to kind of break through. And then they're usually able to pass that immunity on to their young.
If it's a little bit earlier in the season too, you might see like almost like rub damage on their brisket or on their front legs. Those are things to look for as well. But yeah, the hooves one, it stands out when you see it. It'll be like, oh wow, okay, that's weird.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah, and we know that there's immunity coming for EHD, so.
Well, we've seen it in the South.
Exactly.
Right? That's what we're waiting on time-wise.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And unfortunately, Iowa's had like severe year after severe year, in the last couple decades. But
we'll see with the moisture this year.
Only helps lead to immunity quicker.
Yep.
And I was talking to Jason. He said, so far this year, looking good for EHD. Yep. Even if the rain kind of teeters off, it's still pretty wet.
A lot of it there, yeah.
Yeah, and hopefully it just, continues to drizzle a little throughout, and hopefully we won't get too many reports.
Yeah, and while you're checking that out on our website, check out the CWD dashboard too. A lot of good information there, and you can see what we've been doing through time. I know you guys talked with Jason and Rachel about that last time. I think it's good information to see that it's not something new that we're just slapping on. We've been studying this for a while. We've been getting samples and really appreciate working with hunters. The last thing that I just, in the realm of crop damage and deer management that I just plug is be aware of what's going on in the neighborhood. Be good neighbors with people. There is a middle ground to be found out there. And when a farmer comes to you and says, hey, would you help me by doing some of this? We're hunters, right? All of us at this table are deer hunters. And we're all passionate about that resource. And part of the responsibility that comes with that passion is the appropriate management of those things for all Iowans. And so if there's a spot where it's like, you know what, I am holding a lot of deer, I can harvest a few more does, that's a really great thing to do to build that bridge of a relationship with the farmer next door. And that may have echoes into what they're talking to their legislators about, which then will impact what's happening for state law, which we're just here to enforce. So I think it's a neighborhood thing. It belongs to everybody. That's my big plug. Work with your neighbors.
Heck yeah, I like it.
Yeah, my big plug. Sorry. I was going to say my big plug is just to use the resources that are there, whether that's like a depredation biologist, local unit biologist, any species biologist. I know this is kind of deer focused, but if your property is interested in upland birds or waterfowl or anything like that, we have folks that are super well educated over my head in all those fields.
I'm gonna go find the private land biologist.
I was gonna say I didn't know that you guys had a dedicated person to that. I mean, I had no idea.
We'll get you the resources here, even locally, but then we'll also send you the link for that information for anybody else in Iowa that's interested, and definitely have that conversation with them.
Heck yeah.
All right, and then I'm going to throw one thing out there, and this has you guys. I'm just hoping you'll support me. I'm sure you would.
Oh boy.
Oh yeah, this one because it drives me nuts. So we have the Hush program in Iowa, correct me if I'm wrong. It's $1 that goes from our. Is that correct?
Every license.
Every license is $1. Mm-hmm. I want to see it increase to $2. Just because if we increase, that would double the amount of money. Because I've talked to so many meat lockers that quit doing it because they said that there wasn't enough money in it to do it. And it is such a good program to have. And all of us, but the DNR, when I've mentioned it to them, other than you guys, they've told me that they get so much fight and feedback from the hunters that buy those licenses for the extra $1. I was like, come on, man. So if I can support you guys in some way for an extra $1 to have a program that is better funded, it's going to benefit it because that benefits the depredation and all that, because there's a place then to be able to take the deer and stuff like that, where so many of them have closed because they don't and I understand theirs goes into a lot farther. The meat locker guys are having to deal with more things to deal with to be able to take wild animals and domestic stuff. So, but if that's the case, an extra $1 for each of us to be able to have that resource would be huge.
It was a really interesting ramification of COVID. We saw these lockers locally get inundated with beef and pork, and everybody was wanting, from their local locker, and especially when things on the grocery store shelves were shifting, higher beef prices. So we saw them get flooded, and we saw a number of lockers drop out of the hush program at that point, which was too bad. But you're right. Right now, that $1 from each tag goes into this fund that then's doled out through the Food Bank of Iowa. And these lockers get reimbursed $95 per deer that they process. There's been, talks back and forth about how high do we go with that? Is it competitive with their other products? Is it something they're interested in? But the fund is limited, to your point, on how many dollars it brings in. I believe it's actually in the state code as far as how many dollars off a license is. So that would be something that, if enough people contacted their representatives or senators and wanted to have that conversation, there could be movement through that way, and then working things out through the hush program.
Yeah, and I know some folks deal with, not having a hush locker close locally, and so there is the Iowa Deer Exchange program online where, hunters that harvest deer can sign up, and then local folks, they'll even take, field dress deer, which makes it easy for you.
Which is what?
Yeah,
I thought this was like so that somebody could come help you take it to a locker, or they can take a bunch of them.
That's how I met Nathan. So we had a gentleman, and this is a sad story, but one probably worth telling. So through the program that you guys offer, this guy was in Winterset, and I was like, oh, he's looking for a deer. And so I contacted him, and he said, I'd love to have a deer, man, bring it over. And so I killed a doe and I took it to him. Well, he was right over here by the high school. So I meet him, and he's a veteran, younger guy, though. He'd been injured. He was probably in his late 30s, maybe 40. And anyhow, he said, if you kill another one, I'd take that. And I was like, well, what are you doing with them? Because he lived in a small house, just him and his wife. And he says, well, I cut them up for other veterans for no charge or any. No, I just do it. And so what ended up transpiring over the next 2 or 3 years, I was taking him, every doe we killed, I now had a place where I knew it was going to a good place. It's going to a great, to help guys that need it, or gals or whoever the veterans were. And he was doing it all for free. And I was giving them all to him for free type thing. So we had a huge network. He got killed on opening day of shotgun season one year because he was out in front of a push. And they shot, and he got shot right in the chest. And I'm a huge, I will voice my opinion on when it comes to pushing deer. I don't like it, and that is one of the reasons I don't like it, is something like that happens to someone. But anyhow, that's where I met him, and it was through that program. So yes, there is a program out there. Now you do get the occasional person on there that says, oh, I would like to have 4 pieces of sausage and some jerky, and they want it all. And that, I just kind of, but there's a number of people in there looking for a deer.
Yeah, a whole deer.
Yeah.
Because I know people run into that of, giving out a couple sausages and jerky packs gets a little difficult, but, there are folks that want those whole deer.
Yep.
Yeah, glad to have a success story. Horrible ending to it, but
no kidding.
The Iowa
way
Deer
to top it off,
Paul.
Paul.
So, he was just such a good dude. Mm-hmm. So, yeah. But anyhow, so I've utilized that program multiple times, and I go in and check every year. Yeah,
I normally just try to keep my own list of people that have asked for stuff. That'd be
That's
a lot
good
easier.
That's good to have, though.
One of the places, just so that people that are listening might not think of, is churches. We've donated a bunch to churches, so and it's worked out pretty well.
Great.
Great. All right, are we ready? Because I have
pretty
two.
sure we started the wacky fact like 10 minutes ago.
So the first one's going to be a question for you guys, because I saw this and I was like, I should know this, and I don't. But then I'll get to my wacky fact. And mainly he should know. Now, you said you just got into archery, right?
Yep.
Didn't you say? Now, are you shooting a bow, Andy, or no?
I have been for quite a while. I haven't now for a little bit. But
Okay, so there are 4 colors. There's actually 5, but 4 colors on a standard archery target. Okay, like think of the Olympic competition. First of all, what colors are they, and what score do you get by hitting those? Because I'm thinking, I've seen this target a million times in my life, and I don't know the answer to this. I do now.
Do you consider black and white a color?
Black is one, and white is considered the outside circle,
Okay.
even though it's not really a circle because it's the rest of the target. But what are the other colors that are in there in order?
Yellow, red, blue, black, white.
Okay, now what are the scores on the yellow? He got it right.
Yeah, jeez.
Come on, let's go.
Okay, so what are the scores in the yellow?
The center one is 10x.
Okay.
Then the next circle is 10. And then the last is 9. Yeah, that's right, 9. And then when first red one is 8. Then another one is 7. And then your next blue is 6 and 5. And then your black is 4, 3, and then 2 and 1 of white.
He got it all right.
wow,
I'm impressed, Easton. Yeah. I'm absolutely impressed because I was like, I should know that, and I don't. So excellent job.
I've never even shot it.
Give him a. There we go. Easton gets that, but you won't know this one, and this is going to be. This is gonna tell you why we've been dealing with the heat we've been dealing. Do you know how many? Well, first of all, do you know what this term is? What it means?
Corn sweat.
Transpiration.
Dang. It's corn sweat. It's
okay, corn sweat. Okay. Now, tell me how much moisture corn sweat can put 1 acre of corn when it's sweating. How much moisture does it put in the air in that day?
Oh, I'd have to do some serious math.
Oh no, they have it generalized.
Well, I know that the state is like 450-some billion in this,
Yeah, but I'm just saying. Let's put it in a perspective. We're talking 1 acre of corn. You got a food plot you put in, and you
1 acre of corn in the year, or
no, just
a
in
day?
a day, just one day.
5,000 gallons.
You're close. 4,000 gallons of water in a day.
Nice.
Which is why we were all sweating our butts off over the last couple days when the humidity was so high, because the corn was sweating. Now that we know that 90% of I guess it'd be 50% because half of it's beans that year. But, okay, that can mean, but hold on, I'm not done with this one. That can mean Iowa can reach a higher dew point than the Amazon jungle at certain times.
Yep.
So those days when they say it's 92 and it feels like 112,
we don't even get any monkeys to look at.
They're not. It's just freaking hot and sweaty. So
yeah. So do you guys want to job shadow Catherine and go walk and see corn damage in July?
Well, that's gonna be awful. You usually have to walk through it too, don't you?
Yes. And you're trying to fight the corn. I usually have to wear long sleeves because I get all cut up from the leaves and the pollen's falling all on you. And
it's fun times.
Now
Andy misses it.
Here's the question I would have.
I sweat more than the corn, though.
Me too. But here's my question. Do chiggers like corn? I don't, because I don't go in enough cornfield, but I do know that chiggers like alfalfa. I walked through an alfalfa field the other day and I got torn up.
If it's sprayed good, I don't think so.
I was going to say there's so many chemicals in those cornfields. The other thing, though, with chiggers that I've noticed, and this is purely anecdotal, is it depends on how much of the low vegetation you have, like below your knees or below your waist.
Yeah.
In a mature cornfield, there's nothing out there, guys. There's nothing under
Right,
that corn.
right.
So I'd say no. There's just nothing for them to live in.
Gotcha.
Fair enough.
I might have to move to a cornfield because chiggers love me. They don't bother him much, but ticks.
If you like humidity, it works.
Yeah, I'm not a chigger fan at all.
Do you guys have any wacky facts you'd like to add?
I do not. I wasn't
Disappointing.
prepped.
That's
I could have told. I should start from now on when we invite guests. I'm gonna say, and you must come with one wacky fact.
Yeah, that's hard to come up with on the spot. Now, this isn't that wacky, but something that I've been kind of helping out with now in this broader wildlife conflict role has been really interesting to dive into. Is it's been 140 years since black bears have really been a thing in Iowa, right? Black bears used to be across a pretty good portion of the state. More population in certain areas where there's more timber, if you go back 400 years ago. We actually had 3 to 5 overwintering bears in northeast Iowa this year. So that's just something where it's like these things all used to be present, native species on the landscape. I mean, deer were at this point where they were gone from the state of Iowa. And here we have some bears in one little corner of the state kind of making a comeback, which it's interesting. And kudos to the city of Dubuque. If anybody's traveling up there, they're taking some really proactive measures with what they're telling people about bird feeders and that sort of stuff. So I know it's way off topic, but it is kind of a little wacky fact that, hey, bears are a little bit back in Iowa.
What about the mountain lions?
Occasionally, I haven't heard too much about mountain lions this year. We do get the occasional visitor that moves through. In the last 10 years, there's been a few, like 2 instances where there's been one that's hung out on a property over winter, but it usually disappears that next spring if it does. So they don't seem to stick around very long. It doesn't seem like there's enough big chunks of habitat for them.
Fair enough.
The cool thing about, like, when you're talking about the bears, though, is that you could end up with, like, in your lifetime, a major change. Because I look at Arkansas. When I lived in Arkansas, which would have been 1992 to 96, there was some bears in certain part of the state, but where I lived at, there was none. And then 4 years ago, I went back to Arkansas and hunted with a buddy and killed a bear.
Oh, cool.
Because they had just, but they have the right biologist, and he's been working at it, and they've adjusted the seasons and things like that. They have a tremendous bear population and some huge bears because they don't hibernate very often because it doesn't get cold enough. So those bears eat a lot. Okay. So, and then they can bait them, and so he feeds them stuff that fattens them up even more so. So they're Danish bears, and so it's pretty funny. Anything else?
No,
guys, thank you again for coming. We sure have. I think people will get a lot out of what we just talked about here. Hopefully it'll help them. Like I said, whether you got 2 acres, 10 acres, or 2,000, you got to work with your neighbors, and you got to work with the state to be able to make what you're wanting to get out of it, and then shoot whatever deer you want, but if we all work together, then it becomes easier for everyone. It just seems like if you're working with your neighbors, it makes it better.
Absolutely.
So,
yeah. Thank you for having us on the show.
Thank you.
Happy
absolutely. All right, guys. Well, we're going to get out of here. I'm going to remind you to go to the website. We got apparel on there. We got scents. We got Knox. We got all kinds of stuff on there, the canine products. So don't forget any of that stuff. Other than that, we are done for today. We will see you next week on the Raised Hunting Podcast. Thank you.